Blast off, baby. Where was I? Oh, I'm gonna do this Pew Center study, the political topology quiz as well later. More explosions in Lebanon, including at a funeral. Israel gears for Lebanese invasion? Question mark. 8 crimes are done on the hate crime Senate hearing. Doing the Pew political topology quiz. Woke game was born later. What are you fucking doing? What is this guy doing, bro? What are you doing? What is this? Like, are you okay, man? Are you all right, chatter? What the fuck? Have you been? He's like, he really wanted me to see the fucking the massive explosion that occurred in Russia in like I think it was like a missile depot or something that got struck. And it caused the earthquake, and he's like, you have to fucking see this, bro. But he got so excited that he just like didn't link the proper link. Anyway, let's blast off. First, he was trying to embed it in the chat. He hit the embed link, dude. Here you go. Everybody, we're blasting off. More explosions in Lebanon, including at a funeral. Israel gears for Lebanese invasion. Hate crimes are done on the hate crime Senate hearing during the political topology quiz. Woke game dust more later. Get in now. Also, Germany has suspended arms export license to Israel. Anyway, getting back to iShowSpeed, like, again, a lot of people will say, bro, like, why are you excusing someone for their age? But it's like, bro, this dude was literally a baby, okay, a child, and still is a child, okay? And I think he has improved his content and his outlook on the world quite a bit over the course of the past couple of years. Like, he literally did like a crypto scheme too, if you recall. There's steak on the screen. Yeah, of course, dude, because all the fucking clippers on Twitter are disgusting little fucking pervy monsters who literally will take someone else's fucking stream clip and post it on their Twitter account and then slap it with a steak logo because they're getting paid by the crypto casino. Okay, that's it. Has he outgrown the Asian microaggressions? First of all, he wasn't even doing microaggressions. He was doing macroaggressions, okay? And secondly, I don't know, this motherfucker's touring Asia, and it seems like, you know, it seems like he has gone, he has gotten over it. But what do I know? Yeah. Like, he has the method. I've told you this already. Like, when he did the European tour, his method is fucking phenomenal. Okay, get a jersey, get a jersey of the local team, like whatever the fucking dominant team is. Wear the jersey, try out the food, learn some of the language, talk to some random people, and it's just like peak content across the board. My man is very similar to Monkey D. Luffy. Like, he just lives life in the same way. And then he does, yeah. Also, basically, a polishing glad handling. No, it is absolutely a infinitely more organic experience. Yeah, he goes there, he tries out the local food, he closes down a goddamn mall or some shit. I'm gonna just hide the steak watermark. I can't deal with you dumb motherfuckers being like, oh, steak logo. It's like, dude, there's a steak logo on it because like the fucking dumbass clipper put it on there, okay? He's like a chatters are mad annoying right now. I know. He is like a Gen Z Anthony Bourdain, dude. Straight up. Like, not as obviously well thought out in terms of like the dining experiences or whatever, but like this is America's greatest cultural envoy. I'm telling you right now.
Oh my God, that's really 1 million, bro. 1 fucking million.
Yeah, every iShowSpeed, someone in the chat said every time iShowSpeed enters a country, that's one less American flag being burned, okay? And it's right. It's right. Make this man an ambassador, okay? What would be incredible is if he did a China one, if he like actually, one, went to China, and then two, dude, what would be even more leveled up is North Korea. Imagine this dude going to fucking North Korea. That'd be so sick. At this point, At this point, he might as well, you know, he might as well go to North Korea, man. Just fucking fix it. Just go there and then basically fix the problems. Bayraktar'ı what is this? Not Aselsan. No. Not the Bayraktar, but the Asel. There are Aselsan trucks that they're using. That's not how you pronounce Bayraktar.
Another historical event,
Baykar Meydabi. No. I'm not talking about the Bayraktar. Aselsan is not. That was a Turkish clipper who clipped me. And of course, I mean, this is like, I mean, we know exactly what it is because this clip literally features a tweet on it. And I know exactly what it is. And I'm going to fucking lock it. It's late February 2022. There ain't nothing crazier. There ain't nothing crazier than a fucking American correcting a Turkish man on how to say a Turkish word. And here we are. It happened. Well done, comrade. That's the daily Hasanabi guesser. Easy as fuck. All right. We're done with me glazing up iShow speed. Let's get to the news. Okay, let's get to the freaking news. We're talking about Lebanon again. Because yesterday, as you guys know, Israel decided to explode a bunch of fucking pagers in Lebanon. The pagers that exploded beeped first. They were a Taiwanese company, a shipment of Taiwanese company. Pagers were intercepted by the Israeli intelligence agency. They were added in. They placed fucking explosives inside of these pagers. And then those pagers were distributed. Now, the problem here is that you have no guarantee that those pagers are exclusively going to end up in the hands of Hezbollah generals. Okay, that's number one. Number two, even if they did end up in the hands of like militants, okay, they are in, as long as they are not in active combat zones, you can't fucking explode their communications devices in civilian territory. That is just terrorism. Like what that is directly terrorism. Okay. And sometimes, okay, you have liberatory struggles where people do engage in similar acts of terrorism. The IRA comes to mind. But when you are a state, a whole ass state that also has nuclear capabilities doing an act of terror, the situation changes dramatically. What's even wilder, however, is that when Israel did this, everyone in the American government and in the American media basically celebrated this as this like epic James Bond style move. And I looked at it and I was like, dog, this is James Bond, except it would be the villain. Okay? It would be the villain in a James Bond movie that does such a thing. James Bond is not killing a 9-year-old, okay? Good guys in movies don't fucking kill 9-year-olds, okay? Or 10-year-olds. That's not a thing that good guys do. That's a thing that bad guys do. But when Israel is a bad guy in the story, people go, nah, it's actually good. Are you saying terrorists fight fair? Are you okay? What? I don't think you understood a single damn thing I just said, okay? The difference, however, is that when the IRA did that shit, okay, one, it was a liberatory struggle against a colonial occupation. So even if the methods were wrong, in certain instances, the movement was not. The movement was honest, just, and moral. However, it was widely declared terrorism. But when Israel does it, and they're not engaging in a liberatory struggle at all, they are the colonial apparatus in this circumstance, and on top of that, they're doing terrorism, they fucking defend it and say it's epic, it's pog. So I'm giving you an example. Of like how acts that would be considered terrorism are done at the behest of like an overall moral cause versus an overall immoral cause. The problem, however, is that when it's even if it's done at the behest of a moral cause, if it's done by people that we consider not to be our allies, then boom, that's terror. Okay, we're calling it terrorism. When it's done by our allies, even if it's a fucking state and it's done in the most immoral fashion, then it's like, no, that's not terrorism. It's actually good. Okay? It's actually good. We're glad that it happened. And of course, now it's happening again. I just want people to understand something, okay? What Israel did is directly against international human rights. What Israel did is directly a war crime. What Israel did on top of that is also directly an act of terror. Okay? It is terrorism. It is the basic dictionary definition of terrorism. Why are our allies doing war crimes? I mean, what do you mean? That's all they do. And also, we do not check them when they do war crimes, so it does not matter. I agree with you that it's terrorism, but what is the international law that forbids what they did? Okay, so a couple different ways to analyze this. Number one, if someone is considered a militant, even if they are considered a militant, which, by the way, Israel didn't just kill militants, okay? They blew up nurses and doctors too, for the record. Because guess what? You know who uses pagers? Nurses and fucking doctors. Unless they're in the American University of Beirut, in which case they had different pagers, seemingly, that they had swapped out recently. But that's besides the point. I'm not, I don't know. Maybe they just got really lucky, okay? But you know who uses fucking pagers? Like I said, not just members of Hezbollah on the militant wing, but also members of Hezbollah that are in the parliament. So you're talking about like civil affairs liaisons, okay? You're talking about fucking diplomats. You're talking about people that are not like, armed and ready to go into battle. You're talking about motherfuckers that are just diplomats and politicians. That's number one, okay? So blowing all of those people up is insane. You have no assurances that all of these people are going to be like card-carrying Hezbollah militants regardless, right? Because you have no way to stop the distribution. If you intercept the logistics, if you intercept like a shipment of pagers and then put bombs in them, you have no assurances that those fucking pagers are going to directly go into the hands of just simply like Hezbollah generals or whatever. And there's the other side of this, which is that even if you did 100% with a certainty know that these were like Hezbollah generals and fucking armed members of the militia wing, okay, armed members of the military wing of Hezbollah, when they are not in combat, you can't just explode them. That's not how this works. That's still a war crime, okay? Which is wild because a lot of Americans do not understand these rules because they're so far away. They're so far removed from like these sorts of dangers, right? Like they're so far removed from these dangers that it's like not even within the confines of like their imagination is limited by the fact that America is the dominant hegemonic superpower. So they just don't even understand why these rules would fucking exist. Okay? They are in combat? Yeah, dude. Like the video we watched when the dude was like picking up a potato and his fucking dick exploded next to a child and a mother at the fucking fruit market. He was definitely doing combat to the potato. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Dude was just shopping, dumbass. The fuck? How did none of these pages get scanned at airports, etc.? I don't know how they, I don't know the exact way that they intercepted it. Yeah. Dude is in his house tucking his daughter in combat. So they killed a bunch of people yesterday and maimed and like severely injured thousands of people in Lebanon. They exploded these communications devices in civilian area in a country where they're technically not in war with. That is ridiculous, okay? That's just pure, straightforward insanity, terrorism through and through, okay? No holds barred. And even if it wasn't terrorism, it would still be a war crime regardless, but it's also, it's even worse than just like a simple war crime, which is pretty fucking bad to begin with. So, Hassan, you even said yesterday if they took precautions and solely got Hezbollah, you said that would be a lot better. No, I didn't say that would be a lot better. I still said even if they took precautions and solely targeted the militant wing of Hezbollah, that would still be a fucking war crime if they exploded those things in the midst, not of battle, but in the midst of a fucking civilian territory. You got people driving cars. You have people that could be in a fucking plane at that moment. Okay? Do you understand what I mean? Like, you have no assurances. You not only do not care about the outcome here, you don't care about the civilian lives, that the civilian casualties, just say like, sucks to suck for them. But beyond that, like, I mean, this is just like straight up what Al Qaeda and ISIS was doing. Okay. Like, it makes me feel as though for a lot of people, the only reason why they hated ISIS and the only reason why they hated Al Qaeda was because they were fucking Muslim and not because they were doing Israel shit. Like, the principle is what is wrong. The fundamentals are abhorrent here. Okay. The actions are completely unacceptable. You cannot indiscriminately fucking blow up explosive devices in the middle of a fucking crowded area with no assurances that there are going to not be civilian casualties. Like, what the fuck are we doing? So what's actually crazy, and I retweeted, is like a doctor, a nurse died in the process as well. And it is like legitimately terrifying because they, and for people who are wondering, like, why did they do this without like actually, why did they do this without actually like following this up as like a military operation or something? Because everyone was trying to figure out, is this because they want to just like simply show that they still got it? Is this like, what is the real reason, right? What is the real reason why they did something like this? Because this could have been, conducted as a part of a military operation. It still would have been fucking terrorism, but at least it would make like more logical sense for them to do terrorism while simultaneously invading, right? You put Hezbollah in a panic situation. They can't rely on their communications, and then you invade, right? Like, that would still be unacceptable, but it would make more military sense, like tactical sense. So a lot of people who are much smarter than me were trying to understand, like, why the fuck did they do this, right? They're like, are they just simply trying to showcase their capabilities or whatever? Like, just to show boomers that they still got it. They're still James Bond style guys, you know? And this makes a lot more sense. Use it or lose it. Israel reportedly set off pagers amid fears. Plot was exposed. Why are you so naive to what terrorists do? I don't know what this guy's talking about. Mossad reportedly put explosives in 1,000 pages during production before devices reached Lebanon, planning to detonate them in the event of a full-scale war. Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. That makes a little bit more sense to do this in the midst of like an invasion, I think. But instead of doing that, they just like kind of were like, well, we have this goodie and we should do it. Like, we have this goodie, we should use it. If we don't use it, we'll lose it. So I suspect that like people were on to the plan or something. I don't know. Or they were worried that people were onto it. And basically, guys, stop linking me the AOC tweet. Okay, I saw it. I saw it this morning. I know. Okay. It's like, let me cover the story. Okay. So my point is, what I'm trying to say is, not only was this like incredibly cruel and inhumane to do, okay, but it is being widely celebrated in the Western world as like a phenomenal military achievement, which is crazy because it, once again, as someone from a Muslim background, as someone from Turkey, like it's just another somber reminder that like people in the Western world, no matter how progressive they seem, no matter how liberal they seem, they just don't see people from that region as humans. Like they literally don't. They're, because like they just don't, like they I don't know how else to explain it. Like, you're literally looking at like people blowing up in the middle of a fucking crowded marketplace around children. Children also were executed in this assassination, in this act of terror, and they're like, wonderful operation, yo, this shit was fucking sick. And it's so obvious, like, you do not see these people as human beings with lives, with dreams, with the same exact like class interest that you have. That's it. Like, it blows my fucking mind that people just look at the situation and like flex, like celebrate. This is fire. This is awesome. Can you Eli 5 why it's a war crime terrorism? The explosions seem pretty small, so I don't think they could actually hit that many people around the targets. First of all, they did. Okay, they maimed other targets. Secondly, you do not have any control over the explosives in whose hands the explosives is going to reach regardless, because you're intercepting a shipment of a communications device that is oftentimes used by civilians as well. So that's the problem here. And last but not least, you're blowing it up in a fucking crowded area. What happens if it blows up in a gas station? What happens if someone is driving and that shit blows up and then you cause a fucking traffic accident, killing a child crossing the road? These are all additional factors that greatly cause harm to civil society, civilians in general. It's completely and utterly unacceptable. You cannot blow up like 5,000, 4,000 people and be like, I don't understand, why is this terrorism? It's like, those people are not all card carrying armed members of the fucking Hezbollah military wing. What the fuck are you talking about? I saw freaks on Reddit saying this was the most surgical strike possible and that only terrorists were killed and any civilians harmed shouldn't have been associated with terrorists. Absolute sick fucks. Yeah, they don't also know, as the chatters that came in yesterday, okay, chatters that came in yesterday were being like, well, it's Hezbollah, right? And that's how the media covers it, right? The media is like, oh, dude, it's Hezbollah. Hezbollah militants died. Hezbollah militants were killed, and it's a good thing. It's a sick operation. Okay, it's dope. And people don't understand that, no, it wasn't just fucking Hezbollah militants that had their ship blown up. Okay, it was other people that are not associated with Hezbollah as well, including like a 9-year-old girl. But not only that, but also it was also the fucking Hezbollah parliament people. Like it was politicians. People don't even know that Hezbollah is a fucking party with like 18 seats in the Lebanese parliament. They don't know that. They think it's just like, oh, terror. That's it. You are currently explaining to the average person why they can't set off bombs in a crowded area. We are so cooked. Yeah, I know. For later, CNN demonstration of PET and explosives. Yeah. Here is Palantir Technology. Here is the guy who founded Palantir Technology. Palantir, for those of you who don't know, is Peter Thiel's operation. This is a government defense contractor. They do AI surveillance strategies. Okay? Remember that. Here's what his attitude is. Not all cultures are equal. This is the same culture that trafficked and abused thousands of young women in the UK, which they can't discuss because that would be Islamophobia. The West needs to wake up and stop self-destructing with insane immigration policy. It wasn't until your stream that I learned about Hezbollah being a political party. I have 2 grad professional degrees, American education system, including colleges. I mean, I get why the American education system is not going to fucking talk about Hezbollah's like political wing. Okay, I get that. The problem in that situation is not your education. The problem in that situation is the media. The media doesn't fucking cover the story and then also even mention at any given point that like some of the people that were exploded, including the fucking daughter that died in the fucking explosives, was actually the daughter of a member of the parliament. Okay? Yes, her father was Hezbollah, as in a fucking politician, an MP. Okay? A member of the Lebanese parliament. Anyway, and of course, the reason why I talked about this and geared you up for what comes next is because obviously America was like, no, this is, ooh, not good, Israel, don't do it. That's all they fucking said. Right? That's all they fucking said. And then guess what happened? Israel did it again today.
Coming to you live from New York, I'm Zayn.
Because why wouldn't they? There's no, it's basically an assurance that the American government is giving to Israel that we will defend you. There are no red lines. You can do whatever the fuck you want. That's why I said yesterday, like, Israel could nuke Lebanon. And I'm certain that America would not say a thing. They'd be like, this was really unacceptable, Israel. You need to fucking chill out, I think.
And I'm Bianca Goldriger. You are watching One World. And we begin this hour with breaking.
And then people on Reddit will be like, well, you know, have they thought about not being Lebanese? Had they thought about not living in an area where Hezbollah is, you know?
News out of Lebanon yet again. For the second straight day, communication devices are exploding. And this time, it appears to be walkie-talkies.
They blew up a funeral,
At least 9
dude.
people are dead. Hundreds have been wounded. And that's according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. That blast that you just heard in Beirut set off panic in the streets, as you can see here. That was amid a crowd attending a funeral for Hezbollah fighters. Early reports indicate the explosions took place in southern Lebanon and in the southern suburbs of Beirut.
And it comes one day after hundreds of pagers belonging to Hezbollah members exploded nearly simultaneously across Lebanon. The country's...
Like, look at that. Look at that. Like, how is that not fucking terrorism, dude? Like, look at that. Dudes at the fucking cash register, man. Like, what are you talking about? The fuck are you talking about? Walkie-talkies are used by EMTs driving ambulances? Yeah. Bomb found in ambulance in Beirut. Army detonates it safely. What we're hearing is an explosive device was found by the Lebanese army in an ambulance at the American University Hospital. About 10 minutes ago, army engineers dug a hole in the ground, put the explosive device inside, then detonated it safely. We were about 50 meters away, and the sound of the blast was very loud. The question is, how did the device get into an ambulance? It's not just Hezbollah using walkie-talkies. The medical services use them on a regular basis. Doctors have been telling us that they carry pagers like the ones that exploded yesterday, and they've dumped those now. People here are now suspicious of their devices. That's where we're at now, an underlying fear. Explosions this time have also caused fires around the country. And people are fucking not only callous about their, people are not only callous in their defense of this, they're celebrating it. Like, they're openly celebrating it. We watched yesterday a Middle Eastern Institute guy openly go on television and say, this is a wonderful attack. That's what he said. He said this was wonderful. They exploded like a fucking 9-year-old girl, man. Wonderful? Inhumanity, like the lack of humanity in the Western world is so apparent once again, especially in the way that they analyze and especially in the way that they look at Lebanese people, anyone who is in proximity of Arabs, Muslims. Like, it just does not matter, you know? They are not human. They're subhuman. They deserve to fucking die. They shouldn't have been born there. Sucks to suck. And here, the Middle Eastern Institute statement. Remember when I told you it was fucking verbatim what was coming out of Israel? Remember yesterday when I told you that Middle Eastern Institute guy that was a Lebanese dude himself who was like, this was a wonderful attack and the goal is to decouple Hezbollah from Hamas? One day later, here you have it, Barak Ravid probably directly reporting what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, because when he says one source told me in the Israeli government, he means Benjamin Netanyahu usually. The goal was to convince Hezbollah that it is in the interest to disconnect itself from Hamas and cut a separate deal for ending the fighting with Israel regardless of a ceasefire in Gaza. I told you this. I told you this yesterday. It was a direct, verbatim, bar for bar Benjamin Netanyahu take that was coming. Here's Prem's take on it. The Israeli government committed mass terrorism on Lebanon yesterday. They were not intimidated by whatever the U.S., their largest weapons supplier, said in response. Politicians in the media, meanwhile, whitewashed, even glorified it. So they went ahead and did it again today. Collection of tweets celebrating the terror attack. Jeremy Boring, tracking power. Anyone who defends a terrorist attack in Lebanon has outed themselves as an intelligence asset for a hostile state and should be dealt with as such. I don't think they're like specifically an intelligence asset. Like, the Middle Eastern Institute guy is an intelligence asset, obviously. Okay. That's precisely the reason why the way he communicated on CNN as the Arab guy on the panel that this was wonderful and that Israel is probably doing this to decouple Hezbollah from Hamas and try to get them to stand down. That is exactly what the Israeli government's position was a day later, because that motherfucker is an agent. Okay. At this point, that motherfucker isn't coming up with that on his own. He is involved. Okay. He is directly involved. And these people who are directly involved get prominent positions in mainstream media on a regular fucking basis. Okay. It's not an accident that the talking points are damn near identical. This happens in obviously overt ways, in the way that like the American Enterprise Institute or the Heritage Foundation will release studies and talking points, and then those talking points are disseminated to every single person. And that's why you hear Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and numerous other people in independent media basically repeat the same exact talking points on issues like healthcare or how the American military has to be mighty or whatever the fuck, right? Like, that's an overt way in which messaging discipline is instilled all the way down to independent media on the Republican side within the media infrastructure that they've created. That part is overt, but there is also covert ways in which this is done. And that's when you have someone who is working for supposedly an NGO or supposedly a think tank that is completely independent, but is absolutely linked either directly or indirectly to the American State Department and also Mossad as well. Some of these people, on the other hand, are just like fucking celebrating this shit because they're monsters. Lots of people still think bombing Japan is justified. Not surprised that those same people don't see the problem with this. Yeah, the issue is that was done during World War II. It was still unacceptable. Firebombing Japan was still fucking unacceptable. The difference was it was done in the midst of war. We changed the rules of war after said war. This is being done not in the midst of war, in just totally fucking civilian territory, completely removed from any kind of war whatsoever. Okay? That is also unacceptable. This is even more unacceptable. Why? Because this comes after the firebombing campaigns happened in Japan. This comes after we wrote new rules for how we should conduct war. Anyway, it's wild to me how many people use those examples of why we wrote laws to prevent atrocities from repeating as justification for repeating them. Yeah. Oh, the rules do not apply to the West, unfortunately. I know that already. Come on, I'm a Turkish man living in the United States of America and an anti-imperialist. You think I don't fucking know that? I know that. I've known that my whole life. Okay. I'm glad at least the weird silver lining in all of this is that there are at least some Americans that are now finally recognizing that, alongside the recognition of the top of the hour ad break, which comes at the top of every hour, sometimes 14 minutes in. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Moving on from that. All right, we're going to continue with the coverage. It won't be forgotten that the Western media's response to the maiming of thousands of people is how amazing Israel's tech is. The New York Times reporting focused on the strategic value of this horrific attack, raising questions not because Israel maimed and disabled thousands of people, but for not having a clear enough strategy behind their eye-catching demonstration and technological prowess. They're glazing it, dude. They are straight up glazing it. Although the attack on Tuesday was an eye-catching demonstration, okay, an eye-catching demonstration of Israel's technological prowess, Israel has not so far sought to capitalize on the confusion it sowed by initiating a decisive blow against Hezbollah and invading Lebanon. A second wave of blasts was heard across Lebanon on Wednesday, reportedly caused by exploding walkie-talkies and other devices, but the Israeli military did not appear to be preparing for an imminent ground invasion. Has Biden responded, or has anyone? Dude, if you don't want to hear them respond, okay? Because their response is either going to be A, this shit was awesome and I loved it and there should be more of it, or B, you're really increasing the tensions, okay? The New York Times always maintains different standards for Israeli aggression and blatant violations of sovereignty. Israel bombed an Iranian embassy complex. Is that allowed? Israel can likely argue that its actions did not violate international law's protections for diplomatic missions, experts say. It's such a glaringly obvious display of the double standard of Western powers that get away with doing whatever the fuck they want, okay? It's just kind of shocking because America used to do this shit on a daily fucking basis and so much worse in many instances, but that's the United States of America. This is Israel, okay? This is supposed to be a separate nation, right? But not only that, not only is this supposed to be a separate nation, Israel does sometimes outflank the United States of America, okay? Which is crazy to admit. It's accurate to say the hospitals were also using the pagers and walkie-talkies because they sought secure communication because of Israel. No, it's accurate to say the hospitals were also using pagers and walkie-talkies because they use pagers and walkie-talkies. That's what EMS uses. Not because they like sought to secure communications from Israel, but that's just what they do. It's normal hospital shit. They still use pagers in the United States, right? Like doctors still use them. Like we still use them here. Second day of communication devices exploding across Lebanon. At least a dozen people were killed and hundreds injured as a result of communication devices exploding across Lebanon. Now, the terrorism aspect of this conversation also is that like this creates mass chaos amongst the civilian population in Lebanon where people don't know if they can fucking use their phones or not. That's terrorism, okay? That is the specific goal of terrorism, making you doubt, making you think that the thing that you rely on every fucking day could explode in front of you directly near your ear or around your children. That is the goal of terrorism. Okay? It is to invoke terror. It is to cause irreparable psychological harm amongst a civilian population. There are Lebanese people in this chat that are probably experiencing it and going through it right now. There are people whose family members live in Lebanon that are going through this right now. We stored our phones away. We're not allowed to bring them on campus. It's genuinely terrifying. The entire 98th Division of the Israeli Army is currently being staged and mobilized at the Lebanese border. It is completely ridiculous, okay? It is completely unacceptable. It's completely ridiculous. And the fact that it's being celebrated in the Western world is like expected, but it's still it still doesn't change the reality that it's just gross, you know? Lebanon civil defense teams extinguished dozens of fires. Organization says the teams have put out at least 60 fires across the country's southern governorate of Nabatea. Fires broke out in residential homes and local businesses, as well as in vehicles and motorbikes, as a result of the explosion of wireless devices. Firefighting and rescue operations are still ongoing. Israel, it seems, is gearing up to invade Lebanon again. Amid heightened tensions with Hezbollah, IDF deploys 98th Division to northern Israel. The paratroopers and commando division will now join the 36th Division under the Northern Command. The 98th Division, with approximately 10,000, 20,000 troops, was withdrawn from southern Gaza's Khan Yunis in late August. The move comes amid fears of a wider conflict in Lebanon. It's like, it always is like fears of a wider conflict in Lebanon, but you're like fearful that what? Like you're going to go invade Lebanon? That's the fear, by the way. The fear is that they're going to have to invade Lebanon, which is something that they've wanted to do and something that they have done in the past, mind you. It's not like this is, you know, something that they haven't done already. It's crazy. Oh, man, we're so fearful that we're just going to have to invade Lebanon again. I hate that. I hate that we have to do that. And the unfortunate reality is, in the Western world, when you slap the Hezbollah sticker on something because they're fucking Muslim, it's over. You know what I mean? It's like no one ever looks at this and goes, wait a minute. This is like bombs exploding in the middle of a fucking crowded room. Like, how is this acceptable in any capacity? They're like, nah, Hezbollah, they're terrorists. They're around terrorists. They deserve it. Sorry. Isn't an attack on the logistics and command side of Hezbollah a preparation for the invasion of Lebanon? Isn't that the first step an invader makes? No, you would do that in the midst of an invasion if you were making it. If you were doing this as a tactical decision, it would still be completely unacceptable. It would still be a war crime. It would still be an act of terror. But at least there would be some logical fucking reason behind it, because you're already about to explode their fucking neighborhoods regardless. Okay? The reason why they did this before invading Lebanon by giving the game away that they had this capability is because I suspect they were close to figuring it out. They were worried that Hezbollah was going to figure out this plan that they had.
The health minister says at least 12 people, including children, were killed on Tuesday and nearly 3,000 others injured. CNN has learned those coordinated explosions were part of a joint operation between Israel's military and intelligence service.
CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh joins us live now from London. So, Nick, what are we learning about how the Israelis might have been able to engineer and coordinate both of these attacks, which took...
I heard I was going to say this yesterday. I heard an interview on NPR today in which an Israeli spokesman was saying they're tracking everyone injured and going to the hospital because they're all Hezbollah, Lamau. Yeah. So that's the other thing I was going to say. The real psychopathic shit to do in this circumstance is to see who had to go to a hospital so that you can once again coordinate additional strikes afterwards, maybe while they're in the hospital, as a matter of fact.
Place, by the way, roughly around the same time on both days.
Well, I mean, just to step back here, we don't know if Israel were behind this second wave of attacks. It's highly likely that they were, owing, as you say, to the fact that it appears this second wave occurred 24 hours.
Why would they not blow up hospitals in Lebanon? Have they ever faced repercussions from the international community or the top dog in this process, the United States of America, for blowing up a hospital in Gaza, an area that they are a belligerent occupier over? What will stop them from reapplying the Dahiya doctrine, which they invented in Lebanon to begin with, once again in Lebanon? They've done it to Lebanon before, and they will do it again.
After the first wave of pager attacks, which CNN has learned the Israeli Mossad and military were behind, it's highly likely too, given the nature of the low-tech devices used here, that indeed the Israelis may have been behind it. But we don't even have at this stage, I believe, Hezbollah.
Yeah, I gave an excellent example yesterday that I used. If you reverse the roles and Hamas or Hezbollah intercepted production of cell phones in Israel and blew up commanders, politicians, and civilians, it would be considered the largest terror attack ever. Exactly. They would say it's October 7 all over again. It's 9/11 all over again. It's the Holocaust all over again. And now we must do Holocaust 2 and 3 and 4 upon every fucking seemingly Arab person of not Jewish descent, of course. Seemingly every Arab person of Muslim or Christian background in this immediate vicinity. Sorry, sucks to suck. The obvious double standard in this situation is so glaring that it's like it doesn't even bear covering it, you know?
Accusing them directly. There is chaos and some degree, I'm sure, panic here. Lebanese security source telling my colleague Tamara Kiblawi that we're talking about 30 to 40 explosions they've reported so far. The death toll having risen today to 9 and 300 injured. And that's significant because it's getting close to yesterday's. And given how few comparative blasts we're seeing today, that would suggest that the impact of these was significantly more. Now, one of these series of images you're seeing there is of a funeral for somebody killed in the pager explosions. And that, I think, is telling because it speaks to what this Lebanese security source was saying too, that these walkie-talkies, who seem to have been the predominant source of these 30 to 40 explosions, are used for crowd control security by Hezbollah themselves. And that specific event there, many yellow flags, many Hezbollah members there. And so these devices too, from the social media videos we've been seeing, more potent in their explosive power. The pagers, according to the New York Times, had small amounts of explosive inserted into them in their thousands for yesterday's wide-scale explosions. These so far, we think, less blasts, but possibly more potent ones. And so we're dealing here with an extraordinary moment where it may be that the low-tech devices, the pagers that Hezbollah resorted to keep their communications away from the smartphones that Israel could track, has suddenly found themselves 24 hours later reaching to yet a more low-tech device to continue talking amongst themselves, and that those two have been...
Is this the same guy?
Pressed down very well.
What you are looking at is a bomb in the making. The white powder is the explosive PETN. 6 grams of it, just a tiny fraction of what alleged Christmas Day bomber Abdul Muttalib intended to use.
If it goes off, I expect it to blow a hole in the plate, isn't it?
At a remote farm in the English countryside, we're getting a lesson about PETN's destructive force.
Ready to go? Fuses being lit?
Everything about the test is real. PETN is dangerous.
Not taking any chances, because that's going to go off in just a few seconds.
In a moment, we'll see the force of the explosion.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that shit seems like an insane way to do that.
To exaggerate this.
A little earlier in his lab, explosives expert Sidney Alford detonates just a few grains of PETN.
But that was quite a big crack, though.
The core chemical in PETN is hard to make or get your hands on. But although it's an explosive, because it's not volatile, it's perfect for a terrorist on a long-haul flight.
No, it wouldn't go off accidentally. If I were carrying a pocket full, suitably packaged, of just neat powder in my pocket, its blowing up would be the last of my worries.
So
Guys, it was a terror attack because it was a fucking Muslim dude that wanted to do it.
sources familiar with the investigation tell CNN the working assumption is that the alleged bomber, Abdul Muttalib...
Do you not understand? Guys, that was way back in the day, and it was a Muslim dude and a black Muslim guy, too. That's the reason why it was an act of terror. When Israel does it, it's good. Okay? When Israel does it, it's fucking awesome. Okay? It's technological prowess. It's like the most moral army doing it again. When a Muslim guy tries to do it, it's terrorism. It's the Family Guy meme, literally. Okay? Obviously, it's good and sick, and more of it should happen if Israel does it. It's just like a spy movie, but when it's a Muslim, then we recognize it as terrorism, okay? Oh, it's only recognized as terrorism, which it objectively is, when a Muslim guy does it.
May have had some 80 grams of PETN.
That will probably be, if it were dry, closer to 80 grams.
Was that enough to blow a hole in an aircraft?
Certainly it's enough to blow a hole.
What we understand, he was wearing these explosives in the sort of groin area. Can you imagine that you could in some way fit these sew them into a set of underpants? And they
certainly, yes. I've done it. No problem at all.
It looks just like sugar, just like salt, and it's easier to imagine how this can be stitched into clothing and hidden around the body. And that's what makes PETN such a challenge for airport security.
Like, look at this. Dude, look at the fucking insane, like, God, my fellow citizens are animals, okay? Every single one of them, every single person, animals, all of them. Look. Today's cover, 1,000 Hezbollah fighters injured in Lebanon when the new pages all simultaneously explode. Beep, beep, boom. 2,800 Hezbollah terrorists hit by exploding pager plot. literally a fucking 9-year-old girl was one of the 11 people killed in the first day. Okay, I can't wait to watch this movie when it becomes a spy movie. This is the craziest counterterrorism plot I've ever heard of. And then the CEO of fucking Twitter is like putting a bomb emoji. This is like, these people are so gross, and they just don't even recognize the inhumanity. Okay, they don't recognize it. They are psychopaths. They're animals, and they're all around us. Okay, they're around us. It's totally normal. It's just, if this is happening to Arabs, it's fine. It's great. We need more of it. It's a sick counterterrorism plot. We are so firmly in the fucking post 9/11 pocket right now, dude. Straight up.
Targeted. The net result is going to be, I think,
I just wanted to show you that, not realizing that it's the same fucking guy, because this makes it way more clear. This shows the hypocrisy so perfectly. When Israel is doing it, he's glazing them. When he was covering it with the Christmas bombing attempt foiled, okay, he's like, this is an inhumane act of terror. It's the same guy. Yes, it is. It's the same guy, dude. Look, I think it's the same guy, isn't it?
Officials to detect.
Alford believes the only reason lives were spared this time is because the alleged bomber's lack of training.
I mean, it's the same network regardless.
Detonate the bomb, and that means he probably didn't make it.
On the one hand, he's been given, shall we say, a high-value substance, and on the other hand, seems to be left to his own efforts.
Is it easy to make for the average person?
The average person, probably not.
Back at the farm, Alford's crude 6-gram bomb is about to show what PETN can do in the hands of professionals.
Very impressive.
It's
gone through?
PETN may have burnt away.
This is what 6 grams
About
of
6 grams.
PETN does to something that's twice as thick as an aircraft fuselage. Just 6 grams. That's pretty damaging, and that was a tiny amount, easy to sort of hide about a person.
Yeah. Oh, certainly.
Anyway.
extraordinary unease in Hezbollah's ranks, people unsure how they can communicate safely, if the person they're trying to communicate with is indeed unharmed. And I think that will impact Hezbollah's response in two ways. It will reduce their capability and their sense of certainty if they want to do something on a wider scale, but it may also too, in this moment really of acute weakness, perhaps for internal reasons to restore morale or for external reasons to remind people of their deterrent value, it may force them into something more irrational or larger scale. We simply don't know at this stage, but the remaining question too is whether these two coordinated waves of attacks are a prelude to something larger. We'll see that in the days ahead.
Walsh Live for us. Thank you.
And let's bring in Ben Wiedemann, who is outside the American University Medical Center in Beirut. So yet another day of chaos and confusion there, Ben, as we noted just today, as Hezbollah members were being buried. Yet another round of explosions, this time with walkie-talkies. Give us a sense of the mood on the ground, specifically there at the hospital, which it remains inundated with those who were brought in yesterday after the first round of explosions.
Yes, obviously, the doctors, the surgeons have been working around the clock here, trying to deal with the injuries from yesterday. And just within the last half hour, we saw an ambulance come with another injury from, it appears, today's round of explosions. According to Lebanese security sources, somewhere between 15 and 20 blasts went off in Beirut, one of them at a funeral for people killed yesterday. In those pager blasts, an eyewitness told us he saw a man his arms were severely damaged as a result of the blast that took place there. In addition to that, the security sources are saying there are a similar number of blasts today, walkie-talkies, it's believed, in southern Lebanon as well. And of course, the Ministry of Health within the last hour has put out new numbers for today's blast. 9 people killed so far and more than 300 injured. Now, just a little while ago, we spoke to a surgeon who came out. She was on the same plane with us, arriving in Beirut this morning. She said that she had operated on 7 individuals, all of them with similar wounds, missing fingers, faces mutilated by blasts. All the victims, young men in their 20s and 30s. Now, this tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. local time, we're expecting Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah to make a speech that will probably give a good indication of where Hezbollah is going. Obviously, we are in the midst of a serious escalation of tensions as a result of the events of the last 25 or 26 hours. The expectation is that Hezbollah is going to respond, and I think as Nick was just talking about before you came to me, the question is, what can Hezbollah do at this point, given that clearly its communications network, its intelligence networks have been seriously compromised.
This comes just a day after hundreds of pagers used by Hezbollah exploded, injuring thousands. I want to get straight to Beirut and CNN's Ben Wiedemann. Ben.
Yeah, Dana, in addition to the 9 people who have been killed so far today, according to the Ministry of Health, they're saying more than 300.
Can you explain the relationship between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government? Are they the government? They're a part of the Lebanese government, yes. I believe they have 18 seats in the parliament. The Lebanese government is a multi-party, the Lebanese government has a multi-party parliament. Hezbollah is not our government. Okay, it's not the government, but it absolutely has, as you also correctly pointed to and corrected me on, not 18, but 15 seats. I think 3 additional seats that are like, no, it's not like their Green Party. There is no American equivalent because America has a duopoly. Yeah, I think it's 18 because of the independents that are aligned with Hezbollah, and they're part of the governing coalition. Loner Box is going to cook you on Lebanese politics, King. I don't think Loner Box would tell me that I'm wrong because I'm objectively correct. Unless he's just like going to deny that it is not the case. What do you mean Loner Box is going to cook you on Lebanese politics? I haven't said anything that is wrong about Lebanese politics so far. Like, if there is... Like what would be a criticism that someone could launch to what I'm saying so far? That Hezbollah is not a part of the... I literally just said that to trigger you? Okay, well, get banned then, idiot. How stupid.
Have been injured in this second day of blasts across the country. Now, according to Lebanese security sources, there were somewhere between 15 and 20 explosions of devices. It's believed walkie-talkies in the southern suburbs of Beirut. That's where Hezbollah has a strong presence. One of those blasts going off during a funeral for people killed in the pager explosions yesterday in Beirut. In addition, there were a similar number of explosions in the southern part of the country as well. Now, this has obviously put nerves very much on edge, keeping in mind that by and large, with a few notable exceptions, the violence between Hezbollah and Israel has largely...
Their influence in parliament is not nearly as important as the power in majority Shia parts of the country. I know, but that's not the point that I'm making. The reason why I'm mentioning parliament is because America doesn't have a parliamentary structure anyway, so I'm trying to fucking Americanize the conversation. People in the United States of America are primed and conditioned into going, Hezbollah, that's terrorism. They're big, scary Muslim guys with guns that want to fucking put a bomb in a bus or some shit. The reason why I'm describing it with the terms I'm describing it as is so that Americans who are uninitiated, so many people in this chat until yesterday and probably today did not know that there is a parliamentary structure in Lebanon and Hezbollah has a civil affairs division, a active party, and has members in the parliament. Most people did not know this, most likely. And that is not even the fault of academia or our institutions that teach people. I think that's directly a consequence of, look at the coverage here. It's directly a consequence of mainstream media refusing to fucking cover these sorts of issues with a grain of truth, because I guess there is a little bit of fear that if you were to look at it and be like, wait a minute, Israel blew up members of a foreign nation's parliament? That doesn't make sense. That seems a little weird to me. Just like if they were to reckon with the reality that Israel also blew up the daughter of a member of parliament, that would come across as odd because they want to celebrate it. It's much easier to just say, it's much easier to just simply leave it at they're terrorists.
Been restricted to the border area. Cities like Beirut and elsewhere in Lebanon have largely been spared, but now, given that we are seeing these blasts happening in the hundreds yesterday and dozens of them today in cities like Beirut and elsewhere, it certainly does put nerves on edge. Now, we are expecting Secretary General of Hezbollah.
Sorry, it was the son of a member of parliament, not the daughter. The daughter, the little girl is separate.
Nasrallah to make a speech tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock local time. The fear is that we're on the verge of another escalation. In fact, we are obviously in an escalation right now, given the events of yesterday. And today, Hezbollah has vowed to take revenge for these blasts. We don't know to what extent they can, given that clearly their communications networks, their intelligence networks have been to some extent compromised as by what we're seeing in the last 24 hours.
Welcome back. There's been a fresh wave of blasts in Lebanon, with Israel tonight declaring a new phase in the war in the Middle East. This time, the source of the explosions appears to be walkie-talkies. 9 people are reported to have died and dozens.
By the way, the retaliation for this, and once again, I always, as I like to repeat time and time again, the occupier or the colonial entity always sets the terms for violence. What Israel has done, once again, in Lebanon, invites retaliation from Hezbollah and any other Lebanese forces that want to participate in this to respond in kind. What that means is a similar act of terror, which will be considered terrorism, by the way, if there is any sort of retaliation. Okay? It will be considered terrorism when Hezbollah retaliates. Okay? If Hezbollah retaliates, then you'll know how these things are covered. If they are covered in a way, it still won't be covered truthfully, because they'll say, this is so unprovoked. I can't believe they did such a thing. But basically, you are opening up the floodgates to civilians being targeted. Once again, Israel, not safe for anybody, and definitely not safe for Jews either, okay? Because of the actions of the Israeli government. Is it callous to say that if this happened in Ukraine, the media will call for nuking Russia as a whole, but since it's about us Arabs is not okay, but encouraged? Yes, it's not callous to say that. It's correct to say that, because when Russia does like booby trap civilian infrastructure, it is immediately declared a completely gross thing to fucking do and a direct violation of human rights. They have done it. Not to this degree, but they have done it. Also, yesterday I talked about this, but it would be like if Russia didn't just do this to Ukraine, if Russia did this to fucking Poland, okay? If they just like booby trapped and exploded the fucking phones of Polish members in the government and we're like, yeah, sorry, sucks to suck. Like, you just shouldn't have been against us invading Ukraine. Why is there such a difference in reaction between Russia and Israel? It's a very easy answer. Russia is our enemy. Israel is our ally. That's it. Our allies can do no wrong. Our enemies can do no right. It's that simple. No, it's not just skin color, okay? No, it's not just skin color. That absolutely is a factor. That absolutely is a factor. But the largest factor in this circumstance is that Israel is our ally. There's a strategic interest in defending Israel in the eyes of the American government, even if there really isn't at this point. Okay.
Dozens of others have been wounded, with claims that handheld radios belonging to members of the militant group Hezbollah have blown up. The group is blaming Israel and is vowing revenge. Well, tonight, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said his country was opening a new phase in the war in the Middle East.
The centre of gravity is moving north. The meaning is that we are...
In my opinion, the media has been less critical of this blatant terror attack than they were on the Dugan car bomb that by Ukraine that killed his daughter. Yeah, when that happened, the media also celebrated it to a certain degree, where they were like, "Ooh, they did a tactical strike, right? They did a tactical counter. There you go. It's just like it's ally to enemy shit."
Diverting forces, resources, energy towards the north. We have not forgotten about the abductees, and we have not forgotten our tasks in the south. This is our duty, and we are carrying it out at the same time. This operation is carried out by all the bodies, and the task is a clear and simple task: to return the residents of the settlements in the north to their homes safely. I think that when you look at the picture of the situation, the IDF brings excellent achievements, together with the Shin Bet, together with Mossad, on all the bodies and all the frameworks, and the results are very impressive results. We know how important it is at this time to carry out things in close cooperation. This happens first of all between all the players within the IDF, together with the other organizations, and also at the level of the most senior commanders. There is full coordination in the system and unity regarding the achievement of the goals. The Prime Minister, the Chief of Staff, the head of Shin Bet, the head of the Mossad, the Minister of Defense, everything they represent, everything in a common way is dedicated to one goal: to bring the residents back. I appreciate...
You are wrong. Skin color is a bigger factor. Pakistan is an ally of the U.S., but the U.S. has sanctions on Pakistan developing long-range missiles. If you think that America's allegiance with Pakistan is even remotely close to America's allegiance to Israel, I don't know what to tell you, okay? Didn't it target militants, though? I mean, it seems like it would have a lower civilian death percentage than direct bombing like Gaza, or am I wrong? So any military action where civilians die as terrorism seems like a poor precedent. No, it's not a poor precedent. It is the current international standard. You are arguing against international human rights. You are arguing against the laws of war. One must ask the question, is this appropriate to do so? Am I, like, morality aside, it's also illegal. I know that a lot of people just don't even think about the morality of actions despite their legality or illegality, but it's just both immoral and also illegal in this circumstance, okay? You cannot take a military action in civilian areas, okay? Especially against people who are not in combat. Are there war crime statutes about tampering with supplies like this then? I would accept that argument. Yes, there are. And not only that, but the number one war crime statute in this situation is the fact that these are not enemy combatants, okay? They are not enemy combatants. A person who is not holding arms against, you know, your country in that immediate moment, a person who is inside of the boundaries of his own state, who is completely outside of war, okay, who is completely outside of like direct, completely outside of direct combat, is not a legal target. You and many others seem to have a naive notion of what laws are. Wait, what? What are you talking about? There is no naivete here. I'm just simply telling you what the fucking... I'm simply telling you what the rules are. First of all, you cannot fucking booby trap like things that civilians use, okay? You can't do that. That's number one. These are only rules for those underneath the yoke of power. Ugh, God, you're so fucking cringe, dude. It's like chatters that come in here and tell me, the guy who says international rule-based order is nothing to the Western powers, is simply a mechanism for the Western powers to violate on a regular basis and call the other fucking side in contravention of those international rules and standards that we fucking created in an effort to violate it ourselves, okay? To give us just cause to violate it ourselves. I know, dude. Like, thank you, man. Thank you for telling me that, okay? Thank you. I had no idea. It's so stupid. It's like chatters coming in here and being like, why won't you mention that the corporate the corporate monopoly power on our American duopoly is the reason why the Democrats are not fucking behaving in the ways, in expected ways that would actually directly improve the material conditions of American workers. It's like, oh wow, dude, thank you. You just want to come across as smart. Okay? You're not. These are things we already know, okay? Yeah. Also, Israel and the United States are a signatory of this as well. The UN Convention on Booby Traps. Thinking about the rules relating to booby traps under amended protocol 2 of the CCW for no particular reason. It is prohibited to use booby traps or other devices in the form of apparently harmless portable objects which are specifically designed and constructed to contain explosive material. Without prejudice to the provisions of Article 3, it is prohibited to use weapons to which this article applies in any city, town, village, or other area containing a similar concentration of civilians in which combat between ground forces is not taking place or does not appear to be imminent unless either they are placed on or in close vicinity of a military objective, or measures are taken to protect civilians from their effects. For example, the posting of warning sentries, the issuing of warnings, or the provision of fences. None of those things were happening in this situation. Anyway, so obviously booby traps are illegal, especially like, you know, packing explosive devices on like things that civilians use are completely illegal for good fucking reason. You also can't kill or attempt to kill people who are not directly in combat. Okay? You understand that, right? Like, it would be an act of terror if somehow, I don't know, ISIS figured out who every veteran was in the United States of America and then blew them up by booby trapping their fucking phones. Obviously, ISIS would never do that. It's a part of the American intelligence apparatus. But, you know, like doing that to the National Guard, for example, like that's not legal nor allowed. See this from Ofer Kasif. Activating explosive devices in crowded places is an act of terrorism by any accepted definition, and it doesn't matter who is responsible for it, the IDF, Hamas, the CIA, or Mossad. Yep. It's just crazy. The booby trap rule was reinforced after GI dicks were being blown off in Vietnam using bamboo punji sticks and explosives. There's that other side of it too. Anyway, yeah, this little girl was a Hezbollah human shield because a pager filled with explosives exploded in her house. She's a Hezbollah child soldier. Congressman Brad Sherman. In war, it's impossible to fully prevent harm to civilians. Thanks, Congressman Brad Sherman. Seems great. Where's Christian Amanpour? I thought I had it here somewhere. Where the fuck did it go? Dude, come on, dude. Kamala Harris is talking about the booby trapping news when mom find the poop sock. Like, really? Really, dude? Really? Like, time and place, man. I'm not even doing 3-minute ad breaks at the top of the hour segues in the midst of this coverage. And you're over here fucking trying to segue into a poop sock? Like, that's psychotic.
I can say.
Anyway, here, let's hear what Christian Amanpour had to say. CNN's chief international correspondent, usually with like some more reasonable takes. Anyway, I'm going to run the 3-minute ad break now, okay?
There are a lot of people who were being killed and a lot of people injured and a lot of them maimed for good, you know, so it's a very hard situation. And I don't know what's Israel's intention. I don't think they can return their those refugees who went from their villages in the north in this way, because Israel was.
Like, think about it this way. When people are saying, aren't there bombing every day from both sides between southern Lebanon and northern Israel? Great question, right? So that chatter asked that question. Here's the answer. If Hezbollah blew up, again, members of the Knesset in the exact same way in their homes, killed their children, you would understand it as an act of terrorism. Okay? You would. But when Israel does it, it's like, nah, that's actually super sweet that they did that.
Lebanon and had to run away in Lebanon. Of course, they stayed 22 years, but there were too many killings of Israelis there. So I don't think Israel would want to occupy South Lebanon again, because this time the resistance is stronger than it was in the past. So I really don't understand the Israelis, because if they want to go to get back their people to the north, those who were displaced to the north, to their villages and settlements, they have to negotiate. And they have to negotiate with the Lebanese government through mediators like
4 medical staff, an 8-year-old girl, and an 11-year-old boy are dead.
Like the Americans as well. What happened today is escalation. You know, we cannot talk to Hezbollah anymore now in the way we were talking to them in the past, because they are, of course, they were hit very badly, and therefore retaliation is a must to them. We'll try to do something, but I don't know how much we have power to stop them.
It all
why there
sounds
is resistance in the south.
Yeah. It all sounds
the occupation of land.
Foreign Minister, it all sounds really hopeless. On the one hand, you say, the U.S. has to do something. The U.S. didn't even know what was about to happen. Israel is its main ally. Israel takes its weapons from the United States. Nobody knew, according to Secretary of State.
For months and months, I have been telling you that this is Benjamin Netanyahu's October surprise, which is not even a surprise if you're telegraphing this action. Okay? And just like I told you, if America does not restrain Israel early on, since early October of last year, it's been one fucking year at this point. Okay? It's been an entire year of Israel's genocide. Early October, I said, if America does not restrain Israel, this will get completely out of control. Okay? And they never did. Joe Biden's bear hug strategy is in full display. Joe Biden flew to Israel, bear hugged Benjamin Netanyahu, and said, go off, king. This is it. This is what happens when you keep giving unlimited weapons to Israel and never tell them to stop. Okay? That's why all of the tireless conversations surrounding the ceasefire negotiations process is so fucking stupid. It's just a lie, okay? Even leaving aside the obvious moral issue with blowing up thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies, it shows what fascistic hell pit that we're in, that all Israeli media is jerking off at this successful targeted operation without discussing the obvious strategic idiocy of the move. No one is tricking themselves into thinking this provides deterrence, just swinging our dick around and shouting, look how cool our gadgets are. Exactly. I've heard people say that because Israel is in active conflict with Hezbollah, this retaliation is justified and there are no more ethical approach. What would an acceptable response be to Hezbollah be? A bombing would be unacceptable. An invasion would be unacceptable. Ground operations are untenable. I don't agree that Israel should necessarily respond, but I don't know what the counter to this argument is. You should ask them how they would feel if Hezbollah infiltrated and intercepted the regular civilian communications tools that members of the Knesset and Israeli occupying force soldiers that are at home with their families are using, and exploded them in the middle of a fucking day when they were at their grocery stores, when they were at the supermarket, when they were at home tucking their child in. Because if Hezbollah did that, obviously that would be considered an act of terror. That everyone would call it as such. Okay, that's number one. And number two, what is the retaliation to Hezbollah is a great question. If someone asks you that question, it's the same exact answer to Ansar Allah. Okay, these guys are not bombing Israel for no reason. Okay, they're not bombing northern Israel for no fucking reason whatsoever. They have very openly stated since October 8 or October 9 why they are doing this. They are doing this because they want Israel to stop blowing up Gaza. Israel has not stopped blowing up Gaza, so the bombs have not stopped. And it's the same with Ansar Allah. The solution to this problem is de-escalation and diplomacy. The solution to this problem is to end the genocide. But that is not even considered. That is not even up for discussion, right? Even though every single person keeps stating that that is the only way out of this, including generals, Israeli generals, former officials and current officials of the Israeli Knesset. Everybody recognizes that there is no military solution to Hamas. People think they're invincible and nothing like this could ever happen to them until one day you find your phone behaving strangely and it blows up near your head because you did something some government or corporation or bad actor found unsavory. Then all moral strategic justifications will be out the window. Yes, but the difference is in the United States of America, we live inside of the imperial core. We are protected. 9/11 was so powerful in terms of like breaking the American consciousness, and its impact is still very much in our societal understanding of like Muslims, Arabs as a fucking whole, and the war on terror that came after, and all of the domestic setbacks in terms of civil liberties and privacy that came after. That is because 9/11 broke people's minds when they felt like they were far removed from all of the consequences of American imperialism. That brought American imperialism's problems back into our fucking doorstep for the first time ever. Okay? But once again, since then, most of the overwhelming majority of domestic terror has been conducted by our own homegrown terrorists. Domestic terror happens with right-wing nationalists for the most part. Okay? The overwhelming majority. post 9/11 and also pre 9/11. 9/11 was a unique instance due to the fact that it was a foreign-born act of terror. Ironic, considering that they were still trained by us at a certain point and were hyped up as a perfect force of good against the evil USSR. But what you have to consider in this situation is that, like, America feels protected. That's part of the reason why we never have the capacity to analyze these sorts of incidents as like things that could potentially happen to us. That is the, I guess, interesting equation. That's why I always talk about the West Bank. I talk about the West Bank because that kind of violence, the pogroms that occur in the West Bank, the Jewish Power Party and all of the Jewish supremacist terrorists, the settlers, and their behavior in the West Bank is deeply personal. It's like personal hate crimes. So that is easier to contextualize and easier to understand from the lens of the Western world. Whereas when you see entire city blocks reduced to rubble by American weapons in Gaza, well, that's like regular order of business. Those guys probably had it coming. You know what I mean? Americans have only seen that in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places that like deserved this kind of violence. Whereas the West Bank is a little bit more understandable for Americans to empathize with. Anyway, obviously that would be unacceptable, but I don't understand what would be acceptable. Okay, that's fair. Thank you for the response.
Antony Blinken, how is it going to fix this? Then you say you can't talk to Hezbollah because they are, now without their pagers or their walkie-talkies. Are you afraid that this is going to escalate into a regional war, not just Israel going to war with Hezbollah, but a regional war with Iran, etc.?
Who was praising these Israeli attacks? Virtually every single member of American media has, in some way, shape, or form, either defended it or has whitewashed the impact, or said that it was a phenomenal achievement for Israeli espionage. I have yet to hear from, with the exception of like Christiane Amanpour and some others, I've yet to hear anyone in mainstream media in a prominent position look at this and go, children died. Like, children were murdered. These were bombs that exploded in crowded civilian areas. These are the targeting mechanism that they applied here was unacceptable. Like, it just, there was no assurance that this was only militants. And even if it was simply militants, it would still be considered a war crime because these are not enemy combatants in war. Okay? I don't know. It's just fucking sad. It's really sad to see how inhumane my countrymen are once again, and how callous their indifference is to the lives of just like regular old people that happen to be living in a totally different part of the planet. Yeah, walkie-talkie of an emergency responder in Burj Rahal, southern Lebanon, exploded in his house, full of women and children, causing extensive damage. Luckily, no one injured. Al Jazeera Arabic covered it. This is from this morning. This is the second version of the explosions. Hezbollah pager attack not only disabled the group's communications, it has exposed, killed, and wounded, and humbled its members. According to the ABC, the vicious, cold-blooded murder of our people by the Zionist entity is a humbling experience.
We have warned about this for a long time, that this will end up with a regional war. And this is not in the interest of any side, any country in the region. We really want peace as a government, and we are really going to New York, to the Security Council. Friday afternoon, we'll have a meeting of Security Council. We want peace. I don't mean to say peace with Israel and have like a peace treaty. We want peace in the borders between us and Israel. And we want to go back to the truce
in Lebanon,
line, which was approved by Israel and by Lebanon in 1949. So, we really want peace, and we're really working for peace, but we did not receive any good sign from the Israelis in this sense.
Yes, I did cover the Louisiana senator's racist commentary against the Arab Muslim woman, ironically, in the hate crimes Senate judicial hearing. Hourly reminder that U.S. newsrooms are functioning as U.S. and Israeli propaganda wings, and their reporters aren't trying to hide it. Trofimov is the chief of foreign affairs correspondent at Wall Street Journal. Lande is the DC NatSec reporter for Reuters. These are the people who make the news. Jonathan is with Reuters. Yaroslav is with Wall Street Journal. This is the narrative they've chosen to marvel at the kind of Hollywood production this is. They are entertained as thousands are maimed in a bloody attack that sets a very dangerous precedent. Blow-up pagers force the surviving Hezbollah cadres to rely on walkie-talkies and then blow up the much bigger explosive devices inside the walkie-talkies. A TV spy series producers would rule out this twist plot as impossible to believe in. The only reason why you look at this, the only reason why you can have these kinds of opinions is if you just objectively do not believe that the people that are suffering are real human beings. And they are people who are just waiting out their days, waiting until, you know, they meet their demise that they deserve. Okay? Just no empathy whatsoever.
That we are at the beginning of a new era in this war, and we need to adapt ourselves. This is true for everyone, certainly for those who are in the air or control what is in the air, because the position here is stronger. It is not Hamas, it is something else, and we need to prepare for this matter properly. Take that into account. We need consistency over time. This war requires great courage, determination, and perseverance. And thank you for everything you do and carry out. We are going to complete our tasks on all fronts, and you have the duty, but also the right to be partners in this effort, each in his role, in the ground teams and the air teams.
So let's return straight away to our top story, that breaking news from Lebanon. Fresh explosions have been heard in southern Beirut, Hezbollah's stronghold.
You've talked about how the Palestinian movement has had more momentum since 10/7 than ever before, but it feels like Israel's been winning the public opinion again lately. The amount of not just excusing but celebrating shit like this is unreal. No. I mean, that is a byproduct of the media making it seem like people think that this is awesome. I think that's it. That's just the media and people in positions of power. I don't think that the analysis has changed all that much. It's just a new target. So I don't think they've like, no, I will not be going to Reddit. Okay, please.
In the funerals of 4 of yesterday's victims of those synchronized pager blasts, 3 people have been reported to have been killed by exploding walkie-talkies. That's today's development. So let's bring our security correspondent Frank Gardner in straight away. And Frank, a second day of this.
Yeah, yesterday it was pagers, today it's walkie-talkies. So Hezbollah's means of communicating between themselves, from the leadership, from Central Command in southern Beirut, to its fighters in the Bekaa Valley, to its fighters in southern Lebanon, are seriously compromised. Now, we don't know yet what how the walkie-talkies were sabotaged, but what we do know is that thousands have gone off, hundreds have been injured, at least 3 have been killed in eastern Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley. So it's a second wave of this. Clearly, they were tampered with in advance in the same way, presumably, as the pagers were tampered with. I mean, intelligence-wise, yes, extraordinary, but there is going to be a cost for Israel of this. Already there's mounting criticism that international law may have been broken here. Civilians are being harmed in all of this. You know, Hezbollah, yes, it's a proscribed terrorist organization by many governments, but civilians who have nothing to do with Hezbollah have been injured in this, and the injuries are horrific, because when these pagers go off, even though it's quite a small amount of explosive, if you're relatively short-sighted, as you know, you clearly are, you've just put your glasses on, so you know, you've got to raise the thing to close to your face to look, and then it goes off. There are people who've lost eyes from this, facial.
This is like this is what you're gonna see. Like that is the maximum amount of like humanity that you will see from Western media. Okay, that's it. This guy is saying things that like are basically talking about the actual impact of an act like this. This is the most amount of empathy you're gonna see from people. Okay, that's it.
Disfigurements, it's horrific, and so that's drawing a lot of criticism.
Well, as you say that, I'm just reaching for a page with exactly a reference to that, with a doctor there in Beirut telling the BBC that at least 60% of the patients he'd seen had lost at least one eye, with also most loose.
It's kind of crazy, especially because like, this is the maximum amount of empathy you're going to see. And American media is not even reaching that standard. Like, American media is not even reaching the minimum amount of empathy required in this situation to be a human. Wild to watch unfold right in front of our eyes.
Using a hand as well. So that absolutely coincides with what you're just describing there, and the other reports we've had of hand injuries, stomach injuries, eye injuries as a result of these explosions. One of the obvious questions, though, being asked is, why now?
I think the most plausible explanation that I can think of, it's one that's been circulating all day, it hasn't been confirmed or stood up, but I think it's very plausible, is that Hezbollah had discovered that one or two or some of these devices were compromised, and there was the risk for Israel that, assuming that Israel did this, there's no other credible alternative, that their entire operation was about to be blown. So they had to use it or lose it. Now, it's possible that there is a massive own goal here for Israel in this, because think about it. When is the, if you've managed to sabotage your enemy's entire communication system, they don't dare use mobile phones because they're hacked and tracked by Israeli intelligence. So they're using walkie-talkies and pagers, both of which are compromised. Now, the most effective time to use that is...
He's right. He's right. He's right. The tactical, like, when you are even thinking about this as like a matter of like logical strategic reasoning, it literally also does not make sense, because this would be the most effective way to cause chaos after invading Lebanon, when Hezbollah has to be in contact with one another at every point. So he's not wrong. He is right when he says that this also is an own goal, because you just completely gave away your like secret war crime that you could have conducted after invading. Are they doing this for shits and giggles? No. The most likely scenario is that that they were worried about this plot being foiled for one reason or another, and so they did it ahead of time.
Right at the beginning of a military campaign, where you essentially blind and mute your enemy.
Yeah.
And there is no sign of a military campaign, even though lots of people in Israel are pushing for it. There's no sign of troops or in large numbers, columns of tanks moving up to the border. There's no sign of a big preparation of a big IDF, Israel Defense Forces, push against Hezbollah. So I think it's quite possible that Israel has shot its bolt too early here, and that this could be an own goal, because it's going to cost them. There's going to be a lot of criticism. I mean, okay, they tend to shrug it off internationally, but militarily, they might have lost the element of surprise here, because Hezbollah's not going to make the same mistake twice.
In terms of that basic question about how much closer this might bring us to an all-out war, what is your analysis of that?
I don't think it's that likely, but, famous last words, I don't want to be a hostage to fortune on this one, but Hezbollah they will retaliate, definitely, but they will almost certainly calibrate it so that it inflicts enough of a blow that they can say, we've hit back at the Zionist enemy and we have avenged the blood of our martyrs and so on, but not to such an extent that Israel feels compelled to then mount a massive air campaign that decimates southern Lebanon. And there are plenty of voices in Lebanon. They've got no love for Israel, for their neighbor to the south, but they're calling on Hezbollah the whole time for restraint. And against the background of all of this, you've got Antony Blinken, who's been in Cairo, trying to push for a ceasefire in Gaza. If they can only get, and I was at the British Foreign Office last week at the Antony Blinken, David Lammy joint presser, and they said, look, we're 90% of the way there in this ceasefire deal. We just have got to do the last 10%, and that's the hardest bit, of getting it over the line. A lot of people are saying that the big stumbling block is Benjamin Netanyahu, who keeps finding reasons to not sign up to it. But plenty of Israelis say, well, why should we actually withdraw from the Rafah border between Gaza and Egypt, because Hezbollah will just smuggle weapons again through there. So that's the really difficult thing, to break that impasse. If you can do that, it lowers the temperature in the whole region.
Critics have always made the point that they think that there's a danger that Antony Blinken and the Americans have talked up just how close a ceasefire actually is. But when you put the last 2 days' events in Lebanon into context with what Benjamin Netanyahu said was a new war aim, how do those pieces fit together, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that these explosions that have happened in these pagers and walkie-talkies, this won't be welcome in Washington. This is the last thing the State Department or the White House want when they're trying to calm the region down. They've got an election coming. They want to focus on things like that. What President Biden would love in his administration is to get a ceasefire deal in Gaza before he leaves office. Now, something like this is going to make it.
Benjamin Netanyahu, and I will repeat this, will never do something that is pro-Biden. He will never do something that's pro-Kamala Harris. He likes Donald Trump. He flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet Donald Trump personally. If I can see it, then so can, I hope, American officials. This was one of the other locks that I had, which is that this is his goal. This is Benjamin Netanyahu's goal. He is not interested in Democrats winning the election. He wants Donald Trump to win.
Far harder to achieve that because there will, I mean, Israel is currently braced for some kind of retaliation, and there will be some form from Hezbollah. Iran has said, well, you know, we've still got a score to settle with you here, because remember there was the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of the political wing of Hamas, right in the heart of Tehran at an Iranian government guest house. He was there for the inauguration of the president. That is so humiliating for Iran. So they feel they've got a score to settle. So the region is pretty febrile, pretty volatile, pretty tense. And I don't think there's any desire by either Hezbollah or Israel, or Iran for that matter, to go to a full-scale war. It's damaging for everybody. And you've got the Gulf states who are trying to calm everybody down and try to work a peace deal. But unfortunately, the two sides in Gaza, Hamas and the Israeli government, are still too far apart to see that working.
Interesting what you were saying about the Iranian government, because they've just posted on social media, Iran's government spokesperson again condemning what we saw yesterday, what we saw today with these attacks in Lebanon that involve these exploding communication devices. It doesn't extend to any sorts of or threats of rhetoric. So again, perhaps feeding into what you're saying, is despite everything that we have seen, all the different prompters that are pushing perhaps towards the brink, that still the region keeps pulling back at the last moment.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it pulls back both from full-scale war and from actually sealing a peace deal in Gaza. But I think all eyes tomorrow are probably going to be on the speech at 5 o'clock local time, Lebanon time, by Hassan Nasrallah. He is the leader, he's the head of Hezbollah. Now, in the past, you know, we've watched with simultaneous translation.
Yeah. It went from the war in Gaza to the war in the region. And that's how the needle moves, baby. That's how consent is manufactured. Oh, it's this war in the region, tension in this region. It's like, hold up. I thought there was a Israel versus Hamas war in Gaza. Now it's a regional war?
His speeches, and there's a lot of very fiery rhetoric and angry words there, followed by very little action. Lots of people have said, you know, is this going to be the clue? Is he going to declare all-out war? He knows that he's probably compromised. If there was a full-scale war, you know, he's going to have to run for the bunker, because there are spies and agents for Israel, clearly, all around senior commanders. They knew where Fuad Shukr was, you know, on July the 30th when they targeted that senior commander in Hezbollah. I'm sure they know exactly what Hassan Nasrallah's movements are.
A final thought, Frank, because you talk about the Israeli strategy. One of the things I saw reported was perhaps Israel's desire to force a response from Hezbollah, which gives them the pretext to launch some sort of military attack. But when you hear something like that, it is worth always returning to the facts of this, which is that Hezbollah have a huge arsenal, don't they?
They do. And I mean, I think for the Israeli government, they're caught between a rock and a hard place on this, because they are under a lot of pressure domestically, to deal with the problem on the border, which has displaced over 60,000 of their residents. Israel is not a big country. The whole of the north of Israel is within, the far north of it is within range of Hezbollah's missiles. Well, in fact, the whole country is within range of its longer missiles, but the north is being targeted almost daily, and they can't go back to their homes and farms and businesses. Likewise on the Lebanese side. So the status quo is unacceptable for both Lebanon and Israel. But the Israelis know that if they launch a full-scale war against Hezbollah, they will face a barrage of, Hezbollah have boasted 30,000 rockets and missiles a day, up to that amount, which would overwhelm Israel's air defenses. It's Iron Dome, it's David's Sling, all these are the Arrow, plus all the stuff that the Americans might do to help protect them. They can't protect all of it. So you would see high-rise buildings in Tel Aviv getting hit, left, right, and center. The tech hub of Israel that is so phenomenally successful and lucrative, that would be hit. Homes in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Haifa, all up that coast would get hit. And so it's a tough decision for Israel's government to decide what to do.
Senator Welch, you may conclude.
Is it a tough decision? Because it doesn't feel like it. Here, this is what the State Department's response was yesterday to the fucking pager attacks. We covered it yesterday. The Secretary has been very, very focused on ensuring that the tensions in the region do not escalate into a wider regional conflict. Israel is counting on the Americans to block further escalation if it does invade southern Lebanon, diplomatic sources tell Al Monitor. They are going to drag U.S. forces into this conflict. They have no way of, they have both protecting Israel and also simultaneously fucking going into war in Lebanon. They are going to drag us kicking and screaming. Well, the military people might be kicking and screaming in the process, and the American population might be kicking and screaming in the process. But of course, the American government would willingly send the troops that we've already sent to the region. This happening as like Ansar Allah's hypersonic missiles, which is an insane word that I cannot believe I'm saying right now. Like insane sequence of words that are coming out of my mouth. In an unprecedented move, Ansar Allah, the Houthis in Yemen, were able to send a hypersonic missile across more than 1,200 miles in under 11 minutes, which bypassed all 4 of Israel's anti-missile defense systems. Okay? Do you understand what that means? If this is something within the capability of the Houthis, this probably is something that Hezbollah has as well. I'll be radically honest and say that this is entirely the fault of Israel. Okay? Why? Because Israel is showing every fucking regional actor with a shred of sanity that it will not stop its bloody endeavor, its bloody conquest, until it is forced to stop, until penalties are incurred. And the United States, for some weird fucking reason, cannot communicate that message to Israel, or cannot restrain Israel when Israel won't restrain itself for sake of its own preservation. If you are a regional actor and you see the way Israel behaves, what else are you supposed to do? Like what they're telegraphing that they do not care, that they will never stop, and that America will go down with them. Israel is pushing every regional actor to recognize the reality that they have to take matters into their own hands, and that there is no interest in diplomacy here whatsoever, and that Americans are not even actively pushing Israel to engage in diplomacy. That's it.
Right now, state media is reporting what appears to be another deadly wave of exploding devices. This all comes just one day after health officials there say at least a dozen people were killed and nearly 3,000 others were hurt in an attack that appeared to target members of Hezbollah by blowing up their pager. 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News Israel is behind those blasts. So far, Israeli officials have not commented directly, but Hezbollah is promising to retaliate. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is live in Tel Aviv for us this afternoon. So Raf, lay out what we know about this attack today, what kinds of devices exploded
Vicky, this is a very fast-moving situation, but at this hour, Lebanese state media is saying at least 9 people killed and more than 300 injured in today's set of explosions. And while yesterday's blasts all over Lebanon appear to have been the result of exploding pagers, Lebanese state media is saying today they are seeing walkie-talkies, two-way radios blowing up. And again, we are seeing this not just in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. We are seeing it in the south of the country, near the Israeli border. We are seeing it in the east, in the Bekaa Valley, which is another Hezbollah stronghold. And once again, emergency rooms overwhelmed all across Lebanon with this absolute influx of the wounded. So this does appear to be a second wave of what American officials tell NBC News was an Israeli attack yesterday. We don't know exactly how the Israelis got these explosives into these pagers, but however they did it, it had devastating effects. Vicky?
Raf, it is difficult to know how this might have occurred. We know in the explosions yesterday, the pagers appeared to be linked to a manufacturer in Taiwan, but that company...
My cousin in Beirut messaged me saying she disconnected her baby monitor and other household appliances and devices. Our people are unaware of which devices are safe and which are not. If this was happening in Israel, the entire world would be condemning it. It is terrorism. Once home solar panels and electronics shops start exploding, we start walking into Article 51.2, Additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention's territory. Acts or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which are to spread terror among the civilian population, are prohibited. I mean, that is what this is. It's not once that happens. That is happening right now. That's why it's considered an act of terror. That's why it is considered a war crime. Blowing up baby monitors would be insane. No, it doesn't have to be baby monitors, man. That's the reason why you can't booby trap civilian communications devices, whether it be walkie-talkies or fucking pagers. Doctors use that shit. EMTs use that shit. Y'all are being fucking crazy. We're already at the insane point.
Says the pagers were made in Hungary. What are your analysts and your sources telling you about the potential for tampering with these kinds of communication devices?
So this is a very complex, very shadowy supply chain at this moment, Vicky. As you said, this Hungarian company, according to the Taiwanese manufacturers, are the ones who actually made these pagers. But a member of our NBC News team called that company early this morning. They reached a woman who said she was the CEO, who seemed quite shaken to find herself at the center of this international news story, and said that her company doesn't actually make the pagers, that they are intermediaries. So it is not clear at this point who exactly produced the pagers. It is possible, though, that the Israelis, either at the beginning or in the middle of this supply chain, got hold of them and planted those explosives. Vicky?
Raf Sanchez with the very latest out of the Middle East for us. Raf, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and...
This is part of the reason why I don't believe that this was like done without American know-how.
A shaken Lebanon, shaken anew. A funeral stemming from yesterday's pager attack, suddenly the site of fresh chaos. A man lies on the ground, apparently injured by a blast. A new wave of seemingly bigger explosions at funerals, apartment buildings, at mobile phone shops. Again, communications devices the focus. This time, VHF walkie-talkies, an apparent sleeper weapon. Hezbollah still reeling from the extent to which its communications had been penetrated and weaponized, now discovering the breach was deeper still.
Will shake us, not even if you blow us up, or our children. We are steadfast in our path and will not change or move.
Yesterday afternoon, hundreds of pages first beeped with a message purporting to be from Hezbollah leadership and then exploded, killing and injuring fighters, other Hezbollah members, medics, civilians. Some reports that Israel feared its capability was on the verge of being discovered. The choice, use it or lose it.
I don't buy it. I think these rumors, unconfirmed stories are just in order to deflect the criticism inside Israel that someone prematurely activated it. Namely, it's the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who gave the order.
Lebanon's health minister said today of the more than 2,750 people injured in the attack, 150 were in the east of the country, 750 were in the south, with the overwhelming majority, some 1,850 people, in the capital, Beirut. About 300 suffered critical injuries and 460 needed surgery, most on their eyes or faces. Operating theatres overwhelmed as eye surgeons in particular dealt with injuries on a scale they'd never experienced.
1/3. The reason why is because it beeped before it blew up. So people probably took it out of their pocket, like with the express goal of having someone take it out of their pocket and like look at it so it blows up in their head.
Of these 110 lost vision in both eyes irreversibly, and the other 2/3 we have been working all night long. I think this will take us another one day to salvage one eye. So all the eye injuries are associated with amputated fingers.
The pages carried the branding of Taiwanese firm Gold Apollo. It issued a statement saying it had licensed a Hungarian-based company to make the devices in question, bearing its logo. Today, the Hungarian government denied the pages had ever been on its soil, that the firm in question had no manufacturing capacity, even as an opposition MP demanded an investigation into whether it was a front for Israeli intelligence. Israel's defense minister today saying a new phase of the war had begun, a shift in focus from Gaza to the north. This after the news that a division of elite paratroopers and commandos had been sent there in preparation for further escalation. Escalation, exactly what the U.S.
Why are they covering who made them? It's a massively important part of this puzzle. The the networks of intelligence that were able to infiltrate, intercept a supply chain. It also is a direct line. Like you are complicit. If you are a manufacturer that created a civilian product and you worked alongside a foreign government to intentionally kill people that were using your product, are you fucking insane? You are directly complicit in an act of terror. I know that we forget that like Israel gets to do whatever it wants, but like there will be some comeuppance in this process. This is a massively important investigation. It's important for multiple different reasons. Like obviously, one, to figure out like who is complicit along the fucking supply chain. Two, to figure out who actually played a role, and to ensure that there's like additional protocols put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. For the broader consumer base, this is to instill confidence that like your phone is not going to blow up in your fucking ear because Israel decided to like activate it in Lebanon. Like there's so much. There are so many reasons as to why this investigation is massively consequential. Would you say there is no breach? Tide is turning around a bit in normie channels. I've seen terrorism being thrown around. Yeah, I think like the initial reaction, of course, was like everybody repeating whatever the fuck the media was saying and celebrating this as like not a callous, an inhumane act of terror against an unsuspecting civilian population. But now I think people will start thinking about it a little bit more. Like cooler minds will prevail in this situation. That's why I think what I do here is, and what you do here as well, when you repeat the things that you hear here, is important, because there's no other real outlet out there in mainstream media or across the board that are going to cover this with the truth of the matter, like with the actual morality that this story requires. And that's also subsequently why AOC's statement is very important. Israel's pager attack in Lebanon detonated thousands of handheld devices across a slew of public spaces, seriously injuring and killing innocent civilians. This attack clearly and unequivocally violates international humanitarian law and undermines U.S. efforts to prevent a wider conflict. Congress needs a full accounting of the attack, including an answer from the State Department as to whether the U.S. assistance went into the deployment or development of this technology. Like, this is very, very important. Everybody that fucking says AOC is a genocide denier or whatever, shut the fuck up. You don't understand the importance of a fucking a member of Congress in the, party that is currently in charge of the American government openly stating this. Okay, this will be reported on. This is how you inevitably get the mainstream media to cover it with this alternative perspective. Okay. You could say no all you want. I don't care. I do not care what you have to say or think about this matter. You just hyper focus on it being AOC. Okay, and I don't care. I just don't care what your opinion on the matter is. I'm just telling you exactly how it is, okay? When a sitting representative in the Democratic Party says what Israel did here is a direct violation of international human law, okay? International humanitarian law, that is important, okay? That is a sea change. That is an attitude shift. That will get covered by mainstream media. Okay, it lends credence to not just some fucking random dickhead sitting in a goddamn diesel tank top covering the fucking story, but actually a goddamn sitting representative saying it. Okay, it gives it legitimacy. Legitimacy that that obviously requires mainstream media coverage. And then slowly but surely, people will turn around and read those articles. They're aiming to change the whole perspective of the world on how to wage war and what is legitimate or not to survive. So instead of complying with international law, they are trying to change the whole concept of international law. What we know about Israel's bloody attacks targeting consumer electronic devices in Lebanon. Yeah. I think the real scary consequence of this is that, like, going forward, like, Israel will say, like, you can do whatever the fuck you want when you're fighting against quote unquote terror. And that's it. Here's the new death toll from Iraq Bureau Chief of Reuters, Timur Azari. He says the Lebanon death toll rises to 20 today from device blast. Health Ministry says wounded remains at more than 450 today. 2-day toll at 32 killed, 3,250 wounded.
This has been cautioning against for months. The Secretary of State was in Egypt today working on a new Gaza ceasefire text. Israel's main ally saying it got no advance warning of the pager attack.
We remain very clear about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve in Gaza, to see it spread to other fronts. It's clearly not in the interest of anyone involved to see that happen.
For the latest round of blasts, a funeral today for the youngest victim of the pager attacks. Fatima Abdullah was 9 years old. While Israel has not claimed responsibility, the attacks have drawn international criticism. Ireland talking of wanton disregard for civilian life, Belgium of terrorism, the UN human rights chief demanding accountability for those responsible. Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah due to speak tomorrow about its next steps.
Well, I'm now joined from Tel Aviv by Ronan Bergman, journalist and author of Rise and Kill First, the secret history of Israel's targeted assassinations. Good evening. This wouldn't be the first time that Israel had used a communications device
Okay, I'm convinced that everyone living in Tel Aviv has this, they're talking from the same room. I swear to God, I have seen Gideon Levy, I think, speak from this exact same background. What do they got? One fucking room over there? What's happening? No, it's not like this is the fucking one area that they let the anti-Zionist or like those who are critical of Israel ever speak out of. I swear to God. No, it's not the Hasbara HQ, okay? Actually, that's not true because I have seen like ultra-Zionists speak from the exact same background too.
Evening. This wouldn't be the first time that Israel had used a communications device in an attack, but certainly on this scale, it seems unprecedented. Is it becoming any clearer how this might have been done?
Well, we're talking about something between 4,000 and 5,000 devices. It's very hard to tamper with each one separately and leave no trace. So as Israel did in other places, it's getting into the chain of supply or creating the chain of supply, yet to be seen. And also need to create a device or tamper with the device in a way that would not create any attention, that would not create suspicion in the airports if it contains explosives, and in a way that the whole change of production, marketing, selling, and delivery would not be suspected by a military intelligence apparatus of Hezbollah that is, very, very, could be concerned of such hacking or sabotaging or booby-trapping devices. The fact that Israel or whoever did that was able to supply so many for so long, and that at least for until recently, no suspicion was reason, and Israel was able to explode, means that this operation was very complicated, and at least from the Israeli point of view, reached its goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly humiliating, I'm sure, for Hezbollah. But where does this fit into a strategy? If the defense minister now says there's a new phase in the war, what would be the strategy in this kind of mass attack that will inevitably hit civilians?
Well, you need to ask the Minister of Defense if you think that he ordered the attack. Not here to speak for him. I could see potentially few goals. Israel was severely hit, surprised. Israeli deterrence was severely beaten on the surprise Hamas attack of October 7 last year. The second is that since October 8, Hezbollah unprovokedly has been attacking Israel, something that forced the evacuation of 100,000 civilians from the north of Israel. And I think shed some light into the need from the Israeli point of view to redemand the implementation of the United Nations Security Council decision 1701, which basically said all Hezbollah forces should move north to the Litani River, something that Hezbollah violated brutally throughout time since then. So Israel, if Israel was behind that, and Israel, if I could maybe try to think of the decision-making process, Israel is trying to signal to Hezbollah that if this doesn't happen, Israel is ready for escalation. Now, is that wise? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
This could deteriorate into escalation.
I mean, in terms of the decision making, I mean, I know for your book you spoke to sort of practically everybody in the Israeli intelligence, setup. How would a decision like this be made? Would it be the Prime Minister's decision? Would it be Mossad? Who would be doing it?
Now, at the end of the day, it needs to be. It's either the Prime Minister or a smaller group, very small group of ministers. It's always the political.
Yeah, no, he's not an anti-Zionist. I saw the Gideon Levy background and I thought maybe he's of the same variety.
It's never just the professionals from the defense establishment. They will recommend. It's bottom up. They will recommend usually on a certain assassination of operation. This will be brought to a decision of.
I think he's a former Haaretz journalist, but I don't know what his personal attitude is. He used to be a critic of Israel. October 7 changed him. There's a lot of people like that. For me, it was when he said the unprovoked attack from Hezbollah. Hezbollah did an unprovoked attack. Okay, bro.
A discussion in something called Varash. This is the Committee for the Chiefs of the Intelligence, like the British JIC, and then brought to the cabinet or to the Prime Minister. They will make a call. No one else.
So it's absolutely knitted together. Ronan Bergman, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Well, how do these unprecedented attacks fit in with the rules of war? Earlier today, I spoke to the leading human rights lawyer, Sir Geoffrey Nice, who led the prosecution of the former Serbian president, Slobodan Milosevic, at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. And I began by asking him whether the attacks are legal.
They're almost certainly criminal on a number of grounds.
Ken, you're surprised that he's part of the New York Times editorial member since 2018? I am surprised, actually. The New York Times writes articles. That's not even surprising. The New York Times barely writes articles from a liberal Zionist position anymore. Today's New York Times daily podcast was the first time I've heard a liberal Zionist adjacent perspective from the New York Times in a while. Since October 7, the New York Times editorial staff basically is Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and the Jewish Power Party. Okay, the way that they cover the stories, unironically, are outflanking Israeli media. I'm talking Hasbara rags, right? We're talking about fucking people that are outflanking Ynet at every step of the fucking way in the United States of America. It is straight up monstrous, a complete abdication of responsibility to journalism. They've just dropped it entirely. Like, they still have good journalists at the New York Times. Okay. Obviously, I have some of them on the stream. I talk to some of them off stream. There are plenty of phenomenal journalists in the New York Times. They hire thousands of them. But their editorial staff is literally like Kahanists, okay? The outcome of that journalism is whether, like, I don't know if it's directly a Kahanist descendant writing the fucking, or making these editorial decisions, but it basically is like that. It is wild, dude. It is wild how consistently they outflank Israeli reporters who literally live in Israel and obviously have a vested interest in the continuation of the Israeli state in the violent ways in which it exists. Like, these are people who are apartheid defenders in Israel that are doing adequate reporting from the ground in Israel, and the New York Times is refusing to recognize it. Harder than you refuse to recognize the top of the hour ad break. The Vibes Terrorist, is this like Ukraine where I can donate for them to buy drones? How do I donate dollars to Israel to get more beepers going? This is pretty awesome. And it's limited to the terrorists wearing the beepers, so innocent people aren't likely to get hurt. People would rather this over mass bombing, right? Beep, beep. Dude, you're so sick. Whether you recognize it or not, you're already paying for it, okay? In the form of your tax dollars going there. Have fun being fucking broke for the rest of your life and watching your parents die at the fucking hospital floor, because that is the destiny that you have right before you, okay? You are going to sit there and all of your tax dollars are going to go to the Israeli government so they can conduct operations like this that end up killing fucking children. And you're going to sit there and watch your parents fucking die on the hospital floor if you are lucky enough to even get them to a goddamn hospital if they haven't closed in your stupid fucking neighborhood. And you are going to have lifelong crippling medical debt in this fucking country, and you're going to deserve every moment of it, okay? Your life will never get better. And that is precisely the reason why you think Israel doing this act of terrorism against another country is actually the only thing keeping you motivated. Oh, there's other people who are getting killed out there. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I should celebrate it. Okay? You are literally a Nazi. I hope they do another round, lol. Don't worry, brother. What they do or what they don't do does not fucking matter. We're talking about you right now. Your life is never going to get better. Your life is shit right now. Anyone that looks at what Israel did, this act of terror on Lebanese soil, and says, I celebrate it, I think it's great, is already a disgusting little cretin, a disgusting little monster who lives a disgusting little pathetic life. You are very obviously the exact type of person who spends all of his time online growing out your fucking neck beard as your crusty ass basically fucking latches on to the bottom of the plastic on your fucking stupid ass computer chair. Hassan, you're looking a little chubby. Chill out, big up. I know, dude. So goddamn chubby. The only chub that you will ever see is my dick inside of your mother, okay? You dumb fuck. Denying abject reality in front of your eyes once again. Fat boy for life. Yeah, my fat dick. Let me tell you something, okay? Your life is never going to get better. I promise you. If you keep this shit up, your life will never get better. Considering yourself to be like this epic online troll wearing a goddamn trilby talking about, haha, methinks I've destroyed this man in the marketplace of ideas is only going to give you maybe a second of happiness, a brief moment of happiness. You got acknowledged by a person that you despise, a person that you've obviously spent a ridiculous amount of time watching. You created a sock account and then you followed with the Vibes Terrorist. Imagine having an actual life and getting triggered by someone who you think is an abject failure, zero emotional maturity. Now you have changed the conversation back to, I was just pretending to be a fucking loser. Okay? Imagine having an ideal life and getting triggered by someone who you think is an abject failure, zero emotional maturity. You do realize that I'm not actually upset at, whatever dumb fucking thing you said. I'm actually upset at your starting position, which was a celebration of terrorism, a celebration where 4,000 people, random members of parliament, fucking nurses, doctors got their faces blown off as a direct consequence of a violent apartheid regime conducting a genocide, choosing to fucking expand the war into another front. Okay? You are not Israeli. You do not live in Israel. You are simply a merchant of violence. You are literally watching violence unfold somewhere else with your fucking tax dollars. And you're going, I can't change anything in my immediate vicinity. I'm a fucking loser. My job sucks. I have no future prospects. I will never be able to retire. I will never be able to buy a house. Everything is fucking awful. So what can I do? Maybe I'll go and openly celebrate acts of terror. Okay? That's all you did. And that's what's frustrating. That's what's unimaginably frustrating about this entire process, is that you cannot see the reality in front of your eyes. All of these systems that cause you to feel so much frustration are intertwined with one another. Okay? That's it. It is not an own for you to go, you have an ideal life and you are responding to me, a fucking loser. Do you see what I'm saying? We are both know who's the fucking loser and who has an ideal life in the situation. You didn't have to reiterate that, right? Everyone can see that from a mile away. Just like it is idiotic to be like, oh, you're fat. Like, okay, bro, we know. Like, we know that you have no way of seeing what is in front of your eyes. You are the classic right-wing dipshit who thinks just because Ben Shapiro says the words, he's actually a beacon of masculinity. Or Sneeko says the words, so he's an alpha dog. He's a beacon of masculinity. Whereas someone like myself is a pussy. I'm soy. I'm beta. You know what I mean? It's because a lot of you think that when you can see the other person, you can still hallucinate a different reality, an alternative reality where your words matter more than the fucking optics that lizard brain dipshits like yourself could comprehend under normal situations. Okay? Ultimately, though, I do hope, I do wish that you have a better life. Okay? I do. I hope that you have a better life, because this kind of behavior, this kind of sentiment is not expressed by those who are comfortable in their standing in life. This kind of behavior, this kind of sentiment is only expressed by people who are pathetically absorbed by all of the awfulness that they experience on a daily fucking basis. Okay? And I get that. But I promise you, projecting your own personal insecurities onto other people and fucking crying in a Twitch chat is not going to make your life better. Leaning into your obsessions is not going to make your life better. You are not going to be happy. Okay? Anyway, I wish you well, big dog, on your journey. Please don't kill yourself, okay? Don't do it. You have much to live for. Life will get better. You just got to start by leaving the communities that you take part in that causes you to feel really shitty on a daily basis.
And with many of which your viewers will be familiar, having become more acquainted with war crimes law since 22 for Russia, Ukraine, and last October for Israel, Gaza. These things which exploded in an uncertain place at the time they did, obviously likely to be amongst civilians, even if also in the presence of the people being aimed at. Attack on a civilian population, unlawful. Even if damaging the person aimed at, because in his possession, with or without anyone else, unless he's actually an active combatant, unlawful. Even if there's any other defense for what's going on, i.e. the argument of self-defense and all that sort of thing, let's assume that's lawful. Is it, and this will be a word your viewers familiar with, is it proportionate? Clearly not. You cannot calculate what the damage for, the collateral damage to civilians, children, whoever else it might be, is. It's quite likely to be far greater than the advantage, if any, of harming or killing the individuals whose pager it was hoped it would be, therefore criminal.
It is akin to terrorism, then?
Well, I'd rather just stick with the law itself. It is criminal acts within a conflict, as it has been since October, and since and certainly before, and it has been unlawful by non-proportionality and also by other specific crimes, attacking schools, attacking civilians, and now, of course, attacking people completely unknown. This is a criminal war on both sides, and the Western countries have got to say that, accept it, and starve both sides of any ability.
I love defining like what terrorism is and then refusing to say it because Israel's doing it, you know? And that is because he's technically correct. Terrorism is not a legal definition. It's a political tool applied to deny people habeas corpus, okay? To deny people normal humanitarian laws when you apprehend them. And that's it. That's the real reason. That's the real mechanism. That's the real application of the word terrorism. It's just a made-up concept, and that's precisely why you can't use it on Israel. So he's not necessarily wrong.
Ability to continue with it.
If Lebanon wanted to try and bring Israel to account in some way, or any other country over this act, these bombings, what are the routes available?
There are no lawful routes by way of unlawful use of force. And Lebanon's best route now is to pray and aid such parts of the very limited international world order that there are, and to try and get the International Criminal Court not just to consider what has been happening on the territory.
Bernie's live talking about Israel.
And other infections have taken hold. Madam President, Gaza has 12 universities. Every single one of them has been bombed, as have hundreds of schools. 88% of all school buildings in Gaza have been damaged. Every university bombed, 88% of all school buildings in Gaza have been damaged, and more than 500 people have been killed while sheltering in UN schools. There are many, many hundreds of thousands
Bernie's
of
not
children.
finally on it. It's just Senate is back in session. What do you mean? He's been doing this. He's done this since October 7, chat. Come on.
I've been in school since.
The issue is he's done this before. He's done this way before October 7, and he's done this since October 7. There are issues that I have with the way Bernie communicates this problem, specifically because he knows better, and my expectations are much higher than him from him than anyone else. Both, not only as a living, breathing socialist senator, but also as a Jewish man, a Jewish American who fucking ran for president, who was outflanking everybody else on the issue of like what to do with Israel far before October 7. My expectations are significantly higher from him for these reasons. Ultimately, he's still infinitely better than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but that doesn't really mean anything. Who cares if he's Jewish? What do you mean? Judaism, in its long history and its cultural aspects, is incredibly revolutionary.
For this starvation and suffering, and that is that Israel has severely restricted the amount of humanitarian aid, including food, water, and medical supplies that can reach the desperate people of Gaza. This, Madam President, is a clear violation of U.S. and international law. Not just immoral, not just outrageous, but a clear violation of U.S. and international law. And Madam President, every day, every single day, the bombardment continues. Bombing and shelling carried out with U.S.-provided weaponry, often financed in large part by American taxpayers. U.S. weapons financed by U.S. taxpayers.
Yep.
In the last year alone, Congress has voted to send more than $10 billion in American taxpayer dollars to the extremist Israeli government to buy more of the bombs and more of the weapons they are using to wage war against the Palestinian people. Madam President, enough is enough. U.S. complicity in this horrific war must end.
When he says Madam President, I think he's talking about Kamala Harris, who is the leader, who's presiding over the Senate.
Resolutions of disapproval.
That's who Madam President refers to.
$20 billion in
the vice president presides over the Senate. He's speaking to her. He's the president of the Senate.
Congress has to block arms sales, which are inconsistent with established U.S. and international law.
If it's not her right now, it's probably someone else. But
on these measures.
But that's how you refer to
Let
them.
me outline briefly why it is critical that we prevent these sales from going forward. Madam President, I have laid out the horrible reality of the situation in Gaza, but the sad truth is that much of this carnage has been carried out with U.S. provided
It could also be Patty Murray, the current president pro tempore, Patty Murray of Washington.
Equipment. Put simply,
It's probably not Kamala Harris.
To continue this disastrous war would be immoral. It would also be illegal. These sales directly contradict the stated purpose of the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 and the Arms Export Control Act. These laws require that U.S. arms transfers to foreign countries must be consistent with internationally recognized human rights, advance U.S. foreign policy interests, and avoid U.S. complicity with any human rights violations. That is the purpose of these laws. Madam President, during the August recess, the administration sent to Congress official notice for several sales to Israel that clearly do not meet these criteria. The arms sales total over $20 billion and include transfers of joint direct attack munitions, or JDAMs, 120-millimeter tank rounds, 120-millimeter high-explosive mortar rounds, medium tactical vehicles, and up to 50 new F-15 fighter aircraft, as well as upgrades for some of Israel's current F-15s. All of these systems have been used in Gaza, causing massive death and suffering to innocent men, women, and children. The JDAMs and 120-millimeter tank rounds in particular have been used indiscriminately and are responsible for a significant portion of the civilian.
Why do you think the attitude changed? Bernie's attitude on Israel didn't change. He's just a liberal Zionist, and I am frustrated by how much further he should be taking his rhetoric at this point.
Leading to
but this is like normal for Bernie. Everyone that says this is like new or unique hasn't been paying close attention to what Bernie is.
Hundreds of eyewitness testimonies, photographs, videos, and satellite imagery all underscore one simple point. These weapons are being used in violation of U.S. and international law. I have a list here of some of the most egregious incidents involving these systems. Tragically, the list is too long for me to read here on the floor. But, Madam President, I ask that this list be
he's not even a
included
liberal.
in the
He's more
record.
than a liberal Zionist. You're right. You're right about that. Time without an ovo. You're
Madam
giving liberal
President,
Zionists a lot of credit by
the
calling him that. Yeah, I
administration's
agree.
report
He goes
Security
above and
Memorandum
beyond.
20
He's not just a
concluded
liberal.
that,
He's not a
quote,
liberal Zionist, but he definitely
it is
still has
reasonable
that.
to assess that defense articles have been used
All
by
I'll
Israel.
say is he's not anti-Zionist. Okay, that's it. He's not anti-Zionist. Ofer Kassev is the difference. Dr. Ofer Kassev is a member of the Israeli Knesset. He is an anti-Zionist. Look at the way that he communicates on these issues versus the way Bernie communicates on these issues, and you will recognize. Having said that, however, yes, if every Democrat had this position, the genocide would end. Absolutely. If every single Democratic Party member had Bernie's opinion and Bernie's courage and communicated what was going on in Israel in the way that he does, then, there would be no more apartheid. Palestinian here, he's a liberal Zionist. He's a two-stater who thinks Bibi and Likud are the problem. What makes him go above and beyond? I mean, liberal Zionists will say it's unconscionable that the ICC and ICJ are prosecuting Israel, as they openly have said, despite being like Benjamin Netanyahu's primary opposition. Yair Lapid comes to mind when I think of like liberal Zionism. Okay. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, will openly be like, what Israel is doing is unconscionable. They're doing war crimes, and the ICC and the ICJ are good. So he definitely goes way above and beyond. He doesn't just like single out Benjamin Netanyahu. He does single out Benjamin Netanyahu regularly, but he doesn't stop there. He is on the spectrum, but he's not. He is closer to anti-Zionism than like who you would consider to be a liberal Zionist normally. Bernie Sanders has time and time again called into question our undying loyalty and allegiance to Israel. He has regularly talked about stopping weapons transfers. He literally ran on, if I'm president, I will not give Israel weapons. Okay? That's very important to understand. Pre-October 7. Pre-October 7. A lot of you found out about the fucking brutality, not the Palestinian chatter, but like many Americans found out about the brutality post-October 7. Okay? Yeah. I think October 7, especially the attacks on the kibbutzim, broke him a little bit. Straight up. That's my assessment. I don't know what is in anyone's mind, but like as the number one Bernie stan, knowing that he lived in the kibbutz at a certain point in his life, I think like that kind of brought this issue close to home to him in a very emotional way that I think changed his analysis a little bit, because his statements, I mean, he was getting fucking outflanked by AOC, dude. That's crazy, okay? The reason why I say this, you will never see a liberal Zionist voice criticism of the IDF's conduct on moral grounds. You don't even see that from the Zionist left. They'll mention strategic issues here and there, but they never dare show pictures of the destruction in Gaza. Yeah. Well, you're talking about liberal Zionists in Israel and the Zionist left in Israel versus liberal Zionism in America. Like liberal Zionists in America will say like, oh, the settlers are awful. And, oh, well, you know, there's like definitely Zionist left. Yes, there is a thing in Israel. Okay. Some national socialism going on. Yes. Probably more so than anywhere else. Yeah. 100%. That's a real thing. Dudes who are like, liberal Zionists in America know better than to let anyone know they're Zionists, to be honest, like AOC. Chat, AOC has called what Israel's doing a genocide. I am not going to have this conversation with you because you're fucking hyped up, okay? Sorry. AOC has outflanked Bernie Sanders consistently on the issue of Israel. Get the fuck out of here. I don't care to have this conversation with you over and over again. It is so ridiculous, dude. Just analyze the situation adequately. AOC has a lot of fucking awful positions on this throughout this conflict, okay, throughout this genocide. But if every single American politician or a decent number of American Democrats maintained AOC's position on the matter, this would be a very different conversation, okay? Holy moly. Like everybody hyper focuses on our lying and saying that the Democrats are working tirelessly for a ceasefire, which is a ridiculous thing to say, and forgetting all of the other shit that she says in terms of like calling it what it is, a fucking genocide. There's like 4 people in Congress that have done so. Okay. You guys are, on the one hand, you just made them more angry, boss. I know. They have a hyperfixation. And they don't understand like the things that you say, American congressperson will never say. Okay. What good does calling it a genocide do now? If it does no good, why won't other American politicians do it? If it doesn't move the needle at all, you just moved your position entirely. I'm honest about it. I'm telling you right now. AOC has outflanked Bernie Sanders on the issue of Israel, which is shocking. Grift, you know this. Okay, dude. Yeah, you guys are right.
It may, just may, begin to restore a shred of you.
Bro, half the chat can't even talk shit about Israel around their parents without it getting lump in their throat. Tired of this. Yeah. Only those who are not sure of themselves can fear to enter into temporary alliances, even with unreliable people. Not a single political party could exist without such alliances. Lenin.
61% of Americans oppose sending weapons and supplies to Israel, including 77% of Democrats, 62%
Why is it shocking for AOC to outflank
Republicans as well.
She's younger. She also sometimes like has a rad lib tendency. Like the difference is, you know, she'll hyper focus on like optics and whatnot on certain instances. So I think it's shocking in a situation where like someone who is that optics focused will just come out and straight up be like, Israel's doing a genocide. This has to stop. That right there is that's it for me. As the biggest voice on the left, shouldn't you voice against some influencer on the left that obviously have some personal vendetta since the FTV and attack on others on the left, for example? I don't care. I don't care. When people that repeat those statements come into this chat, I'll yell at them. That's it. How about accountability? TLDR, Jojo and I wants you to start drama with Bree Joy. Yeah, I don't really give a shit. I don't care to do so. All right, let's get back to Bernie.
Damn, this guy's good.